The whole country is changing. And I know I'm changing. You're changing. What's happening? You've said to me, I'm not as far away as I used to be. What's happening?
So first of all, you have, in every single domain, we have more change than we've ever had before. We have technological change. We have economic dislocation. We have globalization, so people are meeting people that they never met before. We have identities being undermined, people's identities being undermined by all these changes, which makes people a little tense, you know?
What does that mean, identity?
Identities mean that if I've lived in a traditional community, for example, in which how I thought about God, how I thought about parenting, how I thought about issues of authority, how I thought about issues of respect of authority and tradition, all that is being undermined because of a massive technological globalization. It is opening up every boundary and border. So it's undermining every single community. I don't care if you're the newspaper community or you're a traditional religious community. Everyone is being disrupted. Everyone is being undermined right now.
The Michael Sam thing. I have the problem when I watch the Super Bowl of these over-sexualized commercials. All hetero. Please leave my family alone. Just can't we just watch a sporting event?
So then we have to ask, this is where I always say, the right generally has a correct analysis of what's wrong. But generally their prescription makes everyone tense, other people tense because it feels coercive, right? What we really need to do, and the left doesn't believe there's a problem. And if you don't believe there's a problem, that's a problem.
Right.
So it turns out with all of the sexual freedoms that we have that are really better, we've extended the moral imagination now about how people can live together and how people can love. That's really great. But at the same time, we know we have the most hypersexualized public culture in the history of America. And what we need to do is actually, the freedom of speech, people need to talk about that. If we just allow the right to worry about that, we get to make them the boogeyman. We get to make them the sexual prudes. We get to make them the sexual primitive people. It's not a right-wing problem. I have two daughters. I have a 27-year-old daughter and a 21-year-old daughter. And yes, they're beautiful, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? And I'm like very liberal on this stuff. I'm embarrassed. It's a hypersexualized community.
There is no shame anymore.
By the way, there's two things. No shame, and you can't lose your reputation for everything. And we know from a moral accountability issue, right? You could believe in a God in the sky who holds you accountable. That's very nice. But the single most important thing from a moral, psychological perspective is the issue of your reputation. Tell me in this country, what can you lose your reputation about? Tell me what you can lose your reputation about.
Oh, I do know.
Yeah, right.
I do know. Having an opinion different than the power structure.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Then you're
That's
destroyed.
what we call empire.
Yeah.
When you challenge empire,
yeah.
But that goes back, that's Moses in Egypt.
I know.
That's Jesus in Rome.
I know.
When you challenge empire, whatever that empire is, like the most dangerous thing about power is hubris. You begin to think that you're 100% right. You have 100% of the answers.
How does that break down? How do you disrupt that without breaking the entire system?
Yes, I think that's a really serious challenge because revolution kills a lot of people.
Everything.
So we don't actually want revolution.
Right.
We want really, really, really smart and kind evolution.
Correct.
Okay, so that's a very, very important question. Here I think that the new technologies actually help us, okay? New technologies allow people to develop relationships and have conversations across boundaries that they never had before. I would recommend for every single person, a week shouldn't go by that you don't have a conversation with somebody who really has a different opinion than you. And then keep a journal once a week. Make sure you put something in your book that you learned from someone else that you said, you know, I just never thought of that.
We have got to start reaching across, otherwise, you know, we'll say, oh, well, you know, Irwin's great, but he's the only one that's great who's a liberal. Or, you know, Penn Jillette, he's great, but he's the only atheist I know that's great. So we'll save him, we'll save Irwin. No, no.
Yeah, we have to do two things. One, we absolutely have to develop weak ties or ties with people who we do not normally have relationships with and real conversations. I mean, in all honesty, Glenn, that's what happened with us. I could be really straight. Before, you know, Craig Hatkoff brought us together, you said Glenn Beck, and I would say, and God knows what I would say,
Yeah,
okay? And then I sit down with you, and all of a sudden, there's a face, there's a story, there's a family, there's a deep story of background and biography, there's a soft-spokenness, there's a listening more than there's talking. There's all of a sudden not this abstract, demonized character, but there's a genuine human being. And we only change our minds through relationship. No one gets changed because they're given 5 principles of how to change. We get changed by relationships. So I'd say 2 things. 1, we have to have those relationships, and then there's a responsibility to go back to your own community and take on that community when it stereotypes, and that's even harder.